Prominent politicians and major media outlets are claiming that school districts with high concentrations of poor children and minorities receive less funding per student than other districts. Is this true? Let's look at just facts. According to U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren, our current approach to school funding at the federal, state, and local level underfunds our schools and results in many students from low-income backgrounds receiving less funding than other students on a per-student basis. Moreover, she says that Black and Latinx students are disproportionately likely to attend chronically under-resourced schools. Similar claims have been made by others, such as the New York Times, the Associated Press, Senator Bernie Sanders, and National Public Radio. However, every one of those claims is rooted in statistics that omit federal funds. This is extremely deceitful because the vast majority of federal education funding flows to low-income and minority schools. So where do these statistics come from? A cohort of organizations that have published studies which exclude federal funds and are not forthright about it. Warren cites a study by the Education Law Center, which refers to federal funds on page 2, but then never accounts for any of it. Instead, the study mentions on page 5 that it uses actual state and local revenues for its analysis. The New York Times and NPR cite a report from EdBuild which doesn't say a word about the exclusion of federal revenue. Instead, it tacitly slips this into a separate web page of research methods, which references revenues from state and local sources while ignoring federal revenue. The Associated Press cites a report from the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights that repeatedly mentions federal funding, but when it presents actual dollar amounts, it cites a study from the Education Trust that explicitly excludes federal sources. In short, these politicians and journalists never hint that their statistics exclude federal funds, and the sources they appeal to bury this crucial caveat. This ensures that only diligent readers with time to investigate will learn the truth. Moreover, those who propagate falsehoods about school funding often call for more federal funds to fix this contrived disparity. But since they ignore federal funding, their proposals to increase it will not change the statistics they present. This allows them to continually demand more money from taxpayers while portraying the U.S. education system as systemically racist. Warren's K-12 education plan, for instance, calls for quadrupling Title I funding. Title I is the largest source of federal K-12 education funding, but because Warren doesn't count this money in her statistics, her plan would do nothing to affect her own measure of school funding. So what is the real situation? A broad range of credible studies that include all sources of funding show that school districts with higher portions of minority students spend about the same amount per student as districts with smaller portions of minorities. This includes studies conducted by the U.S. Department of Education, PhD economist Derek Neal, the left-leaning Urban Institute, the Conservative Heritage Foundation, and the academic journal Education Next. The Urban Institute study, which looks the furthest back in time, found that differences in spending per pupil in districts serving non-white and white students are very small, since at least 1972. Likewise, the Education Next study found that per-student K-12 education funding from all sources is similar on average at the districts attended by poor students and non-poor students, a difference of 2.5% in favor of poor students. Within school districts, research published by the Brookings Institution in 2017 found that on average, poor and minority students receive between 1% to 2% more resources than non-poor or white students in their districts. Nevertheless, politicians and teachers' unions sometimes create funding disparities within local school districts by agreeing to contracts that give senior teachers more pay and discretion to choose the schools where they work. These higher-paid teachers tend to avoid inner-city schools with high rates of crime and student discipline problems, thereby resulting in lower spending per student in poor neighborhoods. Simply put, The facts are clear that the claims of Warren, Sanders, NPR, the Associated Press, and the New York Times are grossly misleading because they exclude federal funds. And when all sources of funding are included, school districts with higher portions of poor and minority students spend, on average, the same amount per student as other districts. Then why do they perform so poorly? Stay tuned for an upcoming video from Just Facts that addresses that question. And subscribe to our weekly email to be sure you get it. I'm Amanda Reed Sheik, here with Just Facts. For thorough documentation of every fact in this video and more facts about this issue, read the article, The School Funding Inequity Farce, at justfactsdaily.com.